Utah Scout Cave Incident. On the 20th of November, 1976, a scout group entered a local cave in Utah. The expedition consisted of 14 varsity Boy Scouts plus other youths. They were led by multiple adults including David Mitchell and Robert Jenkins, who was 39. The group explored through chambers and passages. At a junction, Robert and some scouts explored a branch passage. After determining it was the wrong way, they turned back. They came to a section requiring a climb down about 6 to 8 feet. The route involved squeezing through a narrow, smooth, slick tunnel that was 6 to 7 feet long. Robert positioned himself to help the scouts navigate the descent. Several boys had already made it down successfully with his help. Then something went wrong. Robert lost his grip and slipped on the smooth cave surface. He fell into the narrow tunnel hips first. His body wedged into the smooth passage at an awkward angle. The polished limestone offered nothing to grip. He accelerated through the chute, unable to control his slide. As the tunnel began to expand, Robert was no longer touching all the walls. He was in free fall within the expanding passage. His body began rotating as he fell, creating a spinning motion. Robert shot out of the bottom into the open space below. He was falling and spinning with no way to protect himself. His head struck the rocky cave floor first with tremendous force. His face hit the limestone and his neck compressed under the impact. The sound echoed through the cave, a sickening crack. His body continued rotating and his stomach slammed into the floor. The boys immediately began yelling for help. David Mitchell rushed to the scene. Robert was unconscious and bleeding from his head. Then Robert stopped breathing. Mitchell immediately began CPR with chest compressions and rescue breathing. Another adult exited to get professional help. Mitchell continued CPR for more than an hour. His arms burned from exertion, but he kept going. The Cache County Sheriff's Office responded with medical personnel. When they arrived, they took over from Mitchell, but despite everything, there was nothing they could do. The head trauma from landing face first had been catastrophic. Robert was pronounced dead in the cave. 2 hours after he fell, his body was carried out to the surface. New Jersey backyard sinkhole incident. On the 24th of April, 1993, a 7-year-old boy was playing in his backyard in New Jersey with his father. Underground, tree stumps and organic debris had been slowly decomposing. As roots rotted, they left empty spaces in the soil, creating hidden caverns. The boy was running across a section of yard that looked completely normal. He had run across this exact spot dozens of times before, but this time, the underground void had weakened the soil to a critical point. As the boy ran, his weight triggered a catastrophic collapse. The ground suddenly gave way and opened like a trapdoor. One moment he was running, the next there was a gaping hole. The father saw his son suddenly drop as the ground collapsed. The father rushed to the hole and reached down desperately. He tried to grab his son and pull him up, but the collapsing soil created a funnel effect, pulling the boy deeper. The father couldn't get enough leverage through the narrow opening. The boy slipped from his grasp and fell deeper into the void. Then came a horrific thud sound. The father shouted down into the hole, calling his son's name. Remarkably, the boy responded. His voice came up from 8 feet below, frightened, but alive and conscious. The father immediately called emergency services. Multiple agencies mobilized for the rescue operation. Rescuers began carefully excavating around the collapse site. Every shovelful had to be removed carefully to avoid further collapse. Throughout, rescuers maintained voice contact with the boy. They reassured him help was coming. The underground void was a cavern formed by decomposing organic debris. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. 1 hour became 2, then 3, then 4. But as hours continued, the boy's responses became less frequent and weaker. His voice began to fade. The underground environment was hostile, with poor air quality and limited oxygen. The boy was probably suffering from shock, hypothermia, and injuries. After 7 hours of continuous digging, rescuers finally broke through. They reached into the cavity and found the small body, but they were too late. The boy was dead. The 7-year-old who had been playing in his yard that morning was gone. 4 Sharks Blue Hole incident. On the 17th of August, 1997, 2 experienced cave divers prepared for a dive in the Bahamas. Rob Parker was 35 with over 1,000 logged dives spanning 2 decades. His partner Dan Malone possessed similar credentials. 4 Sharks Blue Hole was a vertical shaft plunging beyond 300 feet. Their mission was to penetrate 1,200 feet, spending 40 minutes at 250 feet depth. At such depths, nitrogen narcosis impairs judgment like alcohol. 8 minutes in at 220 feet, they switched to trimix breathing gas to reduce narcotic effects. 20 minutes in, during survey work, disaster struck. One of Malone's trimix regulators failed. Malone switched to backup but didn't signal Parker about the failure. At 250 feet, Malone ran out of trimix and switched to air. This was 30 feet deeper than planned, in the danger zone for severe nitrogen narcosis. Parker switched to air at the planned 220 feet, unaware of the problem. As they ascended to 180 feet, Malone noticed Parker sinking. Parker was succumbing to nitrogen narcosis. Malone grabbed Parker's ankle at 230 feet and began towing him upward. The exertion tore both fins from Malone's feet. Parker regained consciousness at shallower depth and began swimming independently. They reached a narrow restriction. Parker swam above the line while Malone entered below. Malone's air supply dropped to a critical 300 psi. When last seen, Parker appeared to be swimming successfully. Malone emerged and reached his decompression cylinder. later. He turned back, but Parker had not emerged. After 5 agonizing minutes, Malone realized his partner wasn't coming out. He located support divers and began 3 hours of mandatory decompression. The recovery operation began 2 days later. They found Rob Parker 149 feet deep in a vertical restriction. He was positioned head down, facing back into the cave. He had become disoriented and swam deeper rather than toward safety. Nitrogen narcosis was the primary cause of death. The electric pool. 5 friends went caving in Kentucky in 1988. They arrived at Wigpissel Cave ready to explore. Someone gave them a scary warning at the entrance. An electric pump sat in the water inside the cave. The wires were dangerous. The pump could kill them if it turned on while they were in the water. The friends decided to go in anyway. 2 cavers entered first wearing wetsuits. The entrance was filled with chest-deep water. They had to crawl through it. Suddenly, they felt tingling in their bodies. The water was shocking them with electricity. Gary was the leader of the group. He ran to find the pump's power box. He found it at the owner's house. Nobody was home. He flipped the breaker off. He ran back to his friends. The power was cut. The group wasn't sure what to do. One caver felt confident. He decided to test the water. He stepped into the pool. Everything seemed fine at first. Then he took another step. Electricity exploded through his body. Every muscle locked tight. He couldn't move at all. He was frozen like a statue in the electric water. His friends watched in horror. They had to save him fast, but they couldn't touch him or the water. One friend grabbed an old wooden board and he pushed it into the water. 2 others held his legs to keep him safe. They wedged the board behind their frozen friend. They pushed hard through the water. His body dragged along the rocky bottom. Finally, he cleared the pool. He collapsed on the ground. His muscles twitched uncontrollably. His heart skipped beats. Burn marks covered his skin, but he was breathing. He was alive. The friends rushed him to get medical help. The wrong turn. On December 15th, 1988, 3 cave divers entered Emerald Sink in Florida. Bill Cronin was their leader. He had over 100 cave dives. The other 2 trusted his experience. They swam deep into the flooded cave, 150 feet down, 800 feet inside the dark passages. They reached their limit and turned around. On the way back, they reached a junction. Multiple guide ropes met here. They followed a line marked with exit arrows. Exit arrows always point to safety. Suddenly, Cronin flashed his light. He signaled they were going the wrong way. His 2 companions were confused. The arrows pointed to the exit, but Cronin insisted they were wrong. He pointed to a different tunnel, a deep passage leading away from Emerald Sink. The 2 divers checked their air gauges. Their air was running dangerously low. They believed Cronin was making a fatal mistake. They tried to tell him, but Cronin refused to listen. He was certain he was right. The 2 divers faced a terrible choice: follow their leader and probably die, or trust the exit arrows and leave him behind. They made their decision. They turned away from Cronin. They followed the exit arrows to safety. They barely made it out alive. Their air was almost gone, but Cronin never came back. A recovery team searched the cave. They found his body 300 feet from the entrance. He was trapped in a ceiling pocket, completely separated from the guideline. His air tanks were empty. He had swum 200 feet in the wrong direction, toward Clearcut Sink 5,000 feet away. His equipment was poorly maintained. His regulators were clogged. Breathing was difficult at that depth. Nitrogen narcosis clouded his mind. It made him confused and irrational. He insisted the exit arrows were wrong. He swam confidently into the darkness, away from safety, away from his companions. His overconfidence killed him. The 2 divers who left him survived. They made the hardest choice of their lives: the lost diver. On June 19, 1988, 2 divers arrived at Chacalal Cave in Mexico. They came to recover scuba gear from a deadly accident. A year earlier, 2 divers had died in this underwater cave. Their expensive equipment was still inside. The 2 new divers wanted to get it back, but they made a terrible mistake. They had no training for cave diving. Each diver carried only 1 light, no backup lights at all. Their air tanks had only 1 valve. If it failed, they would have no air. Worst of all was their guideline system. The lead diver draped the rope over his shoulder. The second diver followed behind holding the spool. This was dangerous and backwards. The 2 men entered the dark underwater cave. They swam deeper into the flooded passages. They reached 200 feet inside the cave. Then the second diver panicked. Fear took over his mind completely. He dropped the spool and bolted for the exit. His fins kicked up huge clouds of silt. The water turned into a thick, murky soup. The lead diver suddenly felt the rope fall from his shoulder. His guideline was gone. He was alone in complete darkness. He could not see anything at all. He had no rope to follow back. The second diver made it out alive. He surfaced and called for help immediately. A rescue diver named Jim Coate rushed to the cave. He entered the water at 6 p.m. He swam fast through the dark passages, but he was too late. At 200 feet inside, he found the body. The lost diver had run out of air. His fingers showed terrible marks. He had clawed at the rock walls around him. In his final moments, he had scratched the limestone desperately. His lungs were burning. He drowned alone in the darkness. The rescue team brought his body out. They also recovered the equipment from the earlier accident.